Hey, it is FU Friday. Funny story.
It is FU
Just
Friday.
before we get going, my kids always do this thing. They hiya. I don't even know how to do it. They do this weird thing. So we got them like medical grade multivitamins the other day, and
Were you hoping it would stop that?
No, they're called Hiya, HIYA, and so now every morning, all I hear in my house is hiya.
So are we trying to shout out to the vitamin company? Are you trying to get like a pharmaceutical sponsorship?
Oh man, it's a monthly subscription. If they want to sponsor me, let's do it. Anyways, all right. So back with another episode of Go FUD Yourself. Super excited. Fridays are obviously one of my favorite days because it's FU Friday. So
Heck yeah.
Kind of round up all the people that we're annoyed with.
Right now, it's only one person.
In this case, it's really one person. Maybe an organization, but generally centered around one person. Anyways,
if you can't guess, we're talking about the SEC all episode.
All episode SEC. I know how much everybody loves it, but it's real. It's what's in front of us. It's what's making news and what's impacting the space at the moment, and it's what's driving market sentiment in a lot of ways also. So worth talking about. Monday to Friday, daily show. Help support, share, like, subscribe, do all that shit. Quick shout out to Tashi.
Yeah, what you wearing?
For the merch. It's pretty awesome little.
It's so Tashi. White. How do you keep your whites so white?
Because I wear
this used to be white and then.
Yeah, and then you washed it with other stuff. How do I keep the whites white? Well, it's brand new. So that's step one. Step two is I wear it for like an hour and then take it off and put it back in the closet. So it's,
For real?
Well, no. But
this is like when I came to Barcelona for Avalanche Barcelona, and you and a variety of the Banky team all had soles with shoes with white soles. And I was like, how do they keep them so white? And it was like a big thing, less so with you, but they would go back at night and they would change their shoes into their shoes with the white soles. And I was like, what are you guys doing? Anyways, I learned very early in our trip that it's because they don't walk anywhere. So like I would walk to the venue. It was like a 45-minute walk. And they're like, they would barely walk out of the hotel.
Why would we ever do that? Okay, so today we're talking all about the events of the SEC. SEC, we're going to talk about kind of some of the stuff, a little bit of a recap of what's happened over the last week. Let's do it. All right, we are back, and I see BCP's in the house. What is up, brother?
And we got Nikki back.
Joining. Nikki's here too. Nice. All right, well, today's a good day. BCP likes FU Fridays because he likes saying FU to everybody. And today we are saying FU.
Saying FU loudly a lot.
FU to the SEC. All right, so what are we starting with?
Okay, actually, I'm going to start with one that is maybe like less FU to the SEC and a little bit FU to setting precedent. So do you remember this whole thing where the Coinbase product manager and I think his brother were charged with insider trading?
Yep.
This was quite some time ago. So anyway, it was just announced on the SEC. By the way, what we did today is we didn't go through the news. I actually went through the SEC website and I found all of the formal documents about what's going on, and that's what we're talking about today. So this isn't like the FUD and fear mongering that you're going to see on Cointelegraph or the Defiant or something. This is like what is actually happening from the horse's mouth, and then our FU about it.
And then our opinions.
Our opinion about it for once instead of someone else's opinion. Okay, so this had happened, I think, actually a year ago now. And basically what happened is they were listing new tokens and this product manager told his brother and some other people kind of like what was going on. And at the time, because we weren't considering these tokens to be securities or anything related to stocks, basically, he didn't see it as insider trading, but he got hit with charges anyways. They were quick to fire him. Coinbase did not stand by him. So it's kind of dramatic. He totally pled guilty. It was a big deal. Anyway, I guess he's not going to jail. They're just settling.
I think they settled with some jail time, though, no? Pretty sure that's what it said. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it said they said, but I was curious.
I thought they had already been in jail, and then that was
I honestly have no idea. I'm sure they got time served or some like
Yeah.
weekends or some nonsense. But this is kind of ridiculous. Like, I mean, if you're going to do something like this, at least try a little bit harder. Like, it was so easy for the SEC to look into this one because.
No, but that was the thing, is they didn't feel they were doing anything wrong.
Yeah, no, but you're front running a listing like that. Of course, that's doing something wrong.
Well, they didn't think so. And like legit, like I read through some of the interviews and stuff a couple months ago, and they said this wasn't considered a security, so we didn't think that it abided by the same rules. So I told my family, because of course I want my family to get rich. That was literally like his guilty plea, was like, yeah, I absolutely did it, and I'm not really that sorry, but I'll be sorry if I have to be, essentially. And so you're right. He had already been in jail, and then he's getting months served, reduced from his 2-year sentence. And then his brother got 10 months in prison and has to forfeit some of the money. So just over 800, nearly 900,000 US dollars. I don't know. I think this one's really weird.
Well, yeah, it's a little weird. Like, I totally sympathize with the ignorance that they probably felt, and I think he actually did come across relatively genuine. Like, in hindsight, it's always clear to say, yeah, you should have known, moron. Yeah. But I mean, in the heat of the moment, people make decisions. I'm sure we've all made some. What strikes me about this one is, like, we see a lot of white collar crime. We see a lot of hand slapping, generally speaking, with the exception of like Bernie Madoff and maybe a couple of others. There's not a whole lot, Jordan Belfort, there's not a whole lot of like meaningful punitive responses to some of this stuff. And to see something like this that like does suck and is kind of crappy, but like the total exposure was like $800,000 or $900,000, and they're getting like almost a year in prison. Like, that's
one of them's getting 2 years, and one of them's getting almost a year. So the other thing that made them think it maybe wasn't front running is that the product manager himself didn't make the trade. So his brother
was just sharing the info.
So his brother has the money, and he never got the money, and so this was another like weird element of this case. So anyways, together they will serve a total of 34 months in prison, and nearly $900,000 will be given back. Also, though, okay, so on the SEC, the big deal here is that they are emphasizing that crypto asset securities are not exempt from insider trading laws. So they're using this case to set precedent for this being a security, and ergo following other laws that we believe securities should follow, which kind of sets them up to have that precedent to show in other cases and say, well, look, you allowed us to treat it as a security here, which is why this becomes highly relevant today. Also, this did just come through, like this was yesterday, I think, that this.
Yeah. It seems to me that they're trying to make, they're trying to build evidence to validate the case that crypto assets are securities. We saw today, we're not talking about this in the thing, but today Robinhood announced that they're delisting Solana, Cardano, Matic, a few others, stuff that's been named. Coinbase has done quite the opposite in response. They're saying by delisting, we're admitting guilt. And so it's kind of two different approaches. Robinhood, I think it's such a small fraction of their business. I think they're probably just happy to wash their hands of it for now and stay on the sidelines, I think, and just try to toe the line. Robinhood also is probably in its own challenging environments given the GameStop thing, and they had paused shorts and paused sales and all these other things about a year ago that I think they're still technically being investigated for. So they're probably just like, you know what, this isn't a fight that this isn't a hill that we want to die on, Robinhood, because their main claim to fame is equities. And it probably would put in jeopardy some of their other licenses. So anyways.
Before we move on to the next one, we are linking these direct SEC press releases on our account today. So if you want to read them yourself, you totally can. And the reason that I bring that up is because of the language that they use. So a lot of the language in these types of documents is very formal and very extreme because that is the intention of the document. So when you read something like settlement includes permanent injunction, disgorgement of ill-gotten gains, and acceptance of prison sentences, know that this is very purposeful language. And in a way, it is designed to be very final, and it is designed to be kind of FUDdy. So when you read something like that, don't think that disgorgement of ill-gotten gains is anything more than we have to give our money back. Like, don't read these in such a way that the language or the literature is misrepresenting itself, because the intention is to be quite literal. But these aren't words that we use in our day-to-day lives, so sometimes they seem really extreme.
Yeah. And I mean, it's intended again to set precedent, right? Like these rulings or these when these charges are finalized, that then becomes part of common law, at least until somebody challenges it. So we'll have to see what happens. I don't think these guys are going to fight this one. I don't think they have the resources to fight it.
No,
I mean,
this is
they
settled.
pled guilty.
Settled
Yeah, they pled guilty and settled. So like trying to go back and appeal this, I think, is impossible. Now, on the other hand, our friend CZ and Binance, and we've talked a lot about this week. Obviously, it's kind of the only major thing that's going on, it feels like. It's dominating the news at the moment, and the markets are kind of panicking. Today, actually, Binance stopped USD deposits and withdrawals, I believe. I'm not sure about
so they are doing the restraining order. I was going to talk about that after.
Well, no, not necessarily. I think they're just not allowing new US dollars to come into Binance US.
Okay.
I don't quote me on that. I read that quickly this morning before the pod. But I mean, just to kind of sum up what's been going on, really is obviously there's a bunch of charges. I think there's 13 against Binance Holdings Limited, Binance US, and directly named CZ. And
right.
It's important to note that when they directly name a founder, it's pretty tough to be named individually. That's, the way corporate law works in the US. There is meaningful separation, generally speaking, of liability. The only time that you're not protected from that is if they can prove gross negligence. And so they believe by naming him directly that they have enough evidence to show that not only did he know he was doing it wrong, he did it intentionally, with the intention of deceiving the public and the regulators, which is like,
I'd like to state some of the language here. Web of deception is what Gary has been saying. Gary, we're on a first name basis now.
It's Burns, Mr. Burns.
Mr. Burns. I was actually thinking of calling him Jar Jar today because he's just like so ridiculous.
You actually fucking teed that up. That's awesome.
I totally did.
For all of you watching on or listening on Twitter Spaces, she has like this little animated graphic of Jar Jar Binks up on the screen.
And he's got tokens for eyes. Like every time he sees a token, he screams. It's my favorite. That's how I feel about Gary, though, is he's just like, he's kind of a joke and he's becoming a meme to us and nobody can take him seriously because if you beat a dead horse, people stop listening. And yeah, every time he sees a token, he's just like in horror. And this is not a way to live your life, Gary. Gary Jar Jar Burns, I believe is his full name.
He's really not making a lot of friends. Like generally speaking, he's been pandering to the Democrats. But even Democrats now are like coming around being like, listen, our voting base, both Democrat and Republican, is pretty on board with crypto in general, especially in the United States. Mm-hmm. Like both sides of the political aisle. So they all have to answer to their constituents. And I think the constituents, generally speaking, don't love what's happening right now.
So
hopefully we see some change.
The language that Gary Jar Jar Burns is using is deceptive practices, violation of registration requirements, misrepresented trading controls and oversight, web of deception, evasion of U.S. securities laws. And so the reason that that's important is all of these have to do with regular U.S. securities and regular U.S. security exchanges. And so what I think is interesting about this is trying to charge somebody for something that doesn't exist yet, right? We don't have the rules about whether it's a security or not, whether tokens are securities or not. Obviously, the SEC is implying very heavily that they believe them to be securities, but there hasn't been any discussion about it, as we know from Coinbase. So how can they be charged with something that isn't explicit?
I mean, the counter argument to that, I'm just playing devil's advocate here because I obviously don't agree with this, but the counter argument is that if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. And so they're saying it walks like a security and quacks like a security. So we're going to assume it's a security, and ergo you have all of these security registration requirements. Again,
I feel like this is one of those bad relationship tropes where Gary is like, you know what you did. And
you're like,
Finance
no,
is like,
actually,
well,
I don't.
I kind of thought it was like within the realm of allowance, like I thought flirting with the waitress was fine so long as like
that
didn't go any further, and Gary is really offended. So now what?
I mean, we talked about this earlier in the week, I think, and it's really important for policymakers, and this, I mean, obviously I'm a stuck record on this, but it's important for policymakers to think about meeting emerging technology where it is, not where the incumbent technology used to be, and that's kind of what's happening right now. Is I think we can all agree, and even policymakers and lawmakers can agree that there is some nuance in crypto relative to securities laws, and there are many protections that are naturally built in that make redundant a lot of the regulatory stuff from a transparency and reporting perspective, and many other things. And so what's shocking here is that they're not even trying to meet in the middle. They're just saying, nope, everything's a security, follow the old rules. There's a reason that the old rules are being replaced by new structures now, at least from a tech perspective. And that is because it didn't freaking work. And it was incredibly inefficient and incredibly expensive. And the barriers to entry are incredibly high in traditional finance. I mean, starting a bank, getting a banking license as an example, it's easier to do a hostile takeover of a struggling bank just to get their license. And that, for obvious reasons, is problematic. Anyways, all of this go ahead.
Aside from Gary, we also have Gruel. There's a lot of echo.
Yeah, hold on.
Aside from Gary, there's also Gruel, who's the director of the SEC's Division of Enforcement. And so he's saying that this is a conscious choice that CZ and Binance have evaded the rules, but also put customers and investors at risk for their own profit. And just for the record, they are alleging that Binance earned over $11.6 billion in revenue from American transaction fees alone since 2017, not like in the last year. So over a few years, which, I mean, with DeFi summer and stuff, I believe that that's probably accurate.
Sure.
Does that mean that it's wrong? Like, how much did my bank earn this year on my transaction fees?
Probably a lot more than that.
So this gets a little bit interesting because the next element, like there's actually two separate SEC articles for this. The next one is about the restraining order against Binance US and CZ, which is asking them to put everything on hold while they're under investigation. Obviously, they don't want to do that because they'll stop making money, and also because it will have really negative sentiment for their customers who suddenly can't trade and all their assets are frozen, and nobody wants that, except apparently the SEC. But the reason that I say all of this is because the article itself talks about how they are trying to protect the customer. So the article's headline is SEC seeks emergency relief to ensure Binance US customers' assets are protected. And I can tell you, as somebody who might or might not be using Binance, that if you freeze my assets, I do not feel protected.
Yeah, I think that, again, I hate to be the devil's advocate.
I know, usually this is the opposite. I don't really know what's going on here.
But I mean, I think this is a bit of a knee-jerk response. FTX, Alameda, and Three Arrows are probably great examples of when things started to go sideways. Instead of like stopping and getting proper, consultants on board to right the ship, so to speak, notwithstanding any regulatory issues, but just in terms of like filling the holes of client funds. What some of these places that are unregulated with very little oversight channels, what they've done is they've just taken incredibly risky actions to try to dig themselves out of a hole. It's kind of like a gambler that will like mortgage his house to try to make up for the losses. And so I think Binance, probably isn't in the same predicament, but we don't know that. No one really knows. And so I think from the SEC perspective, they're just saying, you know what, this is maybe out of an abundance of caution, because I would be annoyed if my funds were frozen. I'd be more annoyed if Binance used my funds to do something else to fill a hole to try to avoid problems, and they're all gone. At least if they're frozen, I'm going to get them at some point. If they're gone,
is that how you feel? Are you a Binance user?
Not anymore. I'm Canadian and live in the US, so I mean, I pretty much can't be a crypto user legally, because and this is what it's coming to, honestly. Like any protocol now that is paying attention is avoiding that. If you have a token, is avoiding US users, period. End of story. Like you're making it so it's geo-blocked, so that there's VPN blockers, KYC in many cases. I mean, we're contemplating KYCing some of our new protocols, or at least some workflows and new protocols that we're launching. only so that we can validate that we're not serving US clients, which is kind of ridiculous if you're a US person, because all of a sudden one of the most transformative financial technologies of our lifetime, obviously, and it is now out of reach for most Americans, which is kind of insane, super unfortunate. And hopefully there's enough public kind of outcry from this. So if you're listening, and I'm speaking directly to you, BCP, fuck Steve, Evie, and Nikki. Fuck Steve's here. Hey, fuck Steve.
Yeah, he's been here for like almost the whole episode.
Anyways, send a letter to your Congress people, senators. Like, this is only going to get better if we all actually start doing something. And I think generally speaking, the masses are passive in Western culture. Like, we just, we'll just wait and see what happens. We can't control it, yada, yada. But it's that mentality that allows us to be the whipping children. If we're not willing to take a stand. And I don't mean like protesting or anything crazy.
I do. I love the French.
Protesting's okay too.
It's actually really interesting. Everyone gets the bad rap for the French for all their protesting and revolutions because the media makes it out that way. But I actually love the concept that they are so engaged that they're going to make a stink about it. Whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't even care what it is. I don't even care if I agree with their stance. I just love that they're loud about it.
Yeah, the problem with protests right now, in my mind, is that there's a tendency to get out of hand. And so it's not as common anymore for people to just steal the words from President Trump, to peacefully make your voices be heard. That's like that shit, like as we've seen with, the BLM circumstances and all of this stuff on Roe v. Wade, like, and the transgender Antifa collisions, so to speak. I mean, there's a lot of tension there, and like some pretty bad shit can happen. And so hopefully,
some bad shit can happen when lots of people get together, like just to be.
No matter what, yeah,
like sure. It's just bad.
For sure.
but also, anyways, I like seeing people upset. Is what I'm trying to say out loud. That's why I love working with JD. I just piss him off all day. Okay, last one.
There's a reason I have no hair. And it's mainly you.
I know. My grade 9 band teacher told me I was the reason she had to start dyeing her hair in front of the class.
And you've held true to that all the way into adulthood.
Pivotal identity moment. That's who I'm going to be. Okay. The last one is Coinbase. So we already know that this happened because it happened earlier in the week, but it happened directly after the Binance issuance, and it happened during the time when they were looking at the restraining order against Binance. So basically, Coinbase is also being charged for operating unregistered exchange and unregistered securities, and it's all for the same reasons. But what's really important here is that they have actually stated, the SEC has stated in the article, that they are looking to gain equity from this. They want Coinbase, when found guilty, to give money back. They want them to give up their transaction fees. They want to see that come back to the American people. And so this is a really interesting one because it is a way that they might onboard crypto users, American crypto users, into backing the SEC. I mean, anybody who has critical thinking prowess probably isn't going to do that, but it's a really interesting tactic, I think.
So what's really interesting here, and I think it's a little known fact that has been corroborated by multiple law firms that we work with. If you are an unregistered securities exchange, which is what the claim is here, any person that bought any of those assets can get a refund. So if anybody bought anything in 2022 and the prices have since gone down, there could be, and this is why Coinbase is like in between a rock and a hard place, because they can't accept this because their business is done. Like, effectively, Coinbase is dead because, their market cap is probably less than the total amount of securities or tokens. I don't want to call them securities, but at least from SEC's perspective, securities that they've transacted. And so giving those types of refunds, that they wouldn't even be able to do it. I don't think there's even enough market cap or asset value there to be able to even pay that back. I didn't know that was the case, and I was super surprised. That, as an exchange operator, and this is something that DEXs are going to have to think about too, if they want to, like right now, there's a lot of DEXs that kind of loosely serve US persons. And if that's the case, I mean, some of those businesses could be completely crushed. And that sucks. Like that's kind of why we're all like a little bit antsy about this whole thing, is because I mean, obviously it'd be nice to get whatever regulation is going to come. Let's just get it out of the way and fucking move on, in my opinion. And so we can all just figure out how we have to adjust and adhere to it. And then some companies will leave the US, some will, you know, spend the money and make the effort to stay. But at least then we're all on a level playing field. Right now, I mean, in theory, if this proves to be the case and they say, you know what, even in the absence of new rules, we think it was a security all along, so you're all guilty of all of this stuff. I mean, the space is crushed, like absolutely crushed. And so we can finalize this by why on earth is Gary Gensler trying to do this? And my conclusion is the only people that benefit from this is incumbents, is Wall Street, is benefit from the slowing, and the federal government, the Fed, is the slowing down of crypto proliferation. And I think it's become abundantly clear to most of us that Gensler is not going to become secretary of finance, or treasury secretary, sorry. And now I think he's got his eyes set on a Senate spot. So he's pandering to donors. That's it. He's pandering to the donor class. It's insane because of the amount of people that are impacted by one individual's career aspirations. So with that, today we say Gary Gensler, GFU.
Yeah. And also Gruel, who has been saying a lot of wild things as his right-hand man. I don't know when Gruel's plan is career-wise.
Probably to be the next commissioner is what they think.
Yeah, but, I'm imagining so.
I think there will be a lot more criticism in the confirmation hearings of the next SEC commissioners and the chair. I think there'll be some interesting.
I hope so.
there might be a lot more public attention paid to this because it's become a bit of a controversy. Anyways, it's been a wonderful week. Thank you all for listening. We're here every day, Monday to Friday, 12:30 Eastern. All these channels, Twitter Spaces, Spotify, Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter.
July
videos.
5th is our 100th episode, and there's going to be some weird stuff going on. We can't tell you what because we haven't decided. We're arguing about it.
I would call it spirited debates, maybe not arguing.
Bickering. JD.
Go find yourself, Ceara.
Go find yourself, JD.
I won. Ha.